weekend the weather was nice and people were out and about. But look at these crowds lining this East Village Street, sharing drinks and conversation. And there were similar scenes in many neighborhoods throughout New York City. Not seeing a whole lot of social distancing there, right? So what drives this behavior as we're still phasing out of this pandemic? We're going to have a psychiatrist, Dr. Judith Joseph, with us this morning to explain. And she joins us now. Good morning, doctor. I'm looking at those crowds, and I got to tell you, it's very concerning for a lot of folks because we're trying to keep this at bay while rebounding. But how do you balance it?
Yeah, and we've seen this with other pandemics. We've seen that people tend to kind of like let loose after a pandemic subsides. So we know this from post-pandemic behavior and post-pandemic psychology that this is what tends to happen. And so one of the things that I suggest using is empathy. Put yourself in people's shoes. What are they imagining? What are they going through in terms of their emotional state? What drives them to go ahead and take their mask off? Rather than shaming them, because when you shame them, you're not really relating to them, and they're not going to listen to you.
Okay, you don't want to shame them, you want to empathize, but at the same time, you want to set those boundaries so everyone is protected. So how do you do that mentally without shaming?
So the onus really is up to these establishments to enforce their rules, right? They own these properties. Rather than having a peer or another customer get in another customer's face and have an argument, because we know that droplets and talking to people can spread the pandemic, the onus really is on the establishment to set clear, visible rules. And they can use signs. You've seen signs everywhere. You may not be just using one sign. You may have to put signs in multiple places to remind people. Also, one thing that really works is stories. People really connect to cases. So having, that talk about how this business was really hard hit and we want to keep our doors open. And as long as we all do this together and socially distance properly and wear a mask, we can still have our economy booming, and businesses like these small businesses can remain open. So stories really work.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of coordination. A lot of these businesses, though, are just trying to get back on their feet. They want the crowds. They don't have the money for the security to make sure that people are spaced out. So people are juggling a lot. And at the same time, there's still the concern about the huge crowds protesting for Black Lives Matter. So are you seeing many of these protesters on the street sending messages that it's okay to be outside, it's okay to be in close contact? It's like we understand the need, we understand the motivation, but again, it comes to that balance. How do you do that?
Some of my patients have been responsible protesters and some not so responsible. And what I've heard is that there are some subsets of protesters who are actually carrying masks, carrying first aid items, carrying hand sanitizer, and trying to help others to responsibly protest. And the research really shows that when you're outside, you're at a lower risk than if you're in a small place with no ventilation when you're talking loudly without a mask. So there are ways that you can do things safely. You can be outside safely. You can wear a mask. You can use hand sanitizer. You can try your best to maintain a distance from others. So rather than going back to the complete shutdown, people can gradually re-enter society and re-enter socialization and do so responsibly. And what I suggest to my patients is that they look at their iPhone pictures or they look at their smartphone pictures from months ago when we were first locked down and remember how that feeling was. You don't want to be there again.
Yeah,
so that can be a motivator to prevent you from, being in that same place.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm hearing from you is the onus is also on us as the individuals to be responsible and do the right thing. Okay, Dr. Joseph, thank you so much for your insight. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.